another step in understanding the management breakdown at the NRC. I welcome our witness, Mr. Bell, and I thank him for his professionalism. He started this review last October at the request of Chairman Upton and Mr. Whitfield. His work is both thorough and timely. Having read the entire report, I'm struck by three problems at the NRC. First is the inefficiency. It is unbelievable that 1 week after the Nuclear Waste Policy Act says that the NRC must either approve or deny the license application or formally notify Congress as to why it needs more time, the Commission cannot even reach the question of whether the application is even alive. 1 year ago, the Atomic Safety and Licensing Board ruled that DOE has no authority to withdraw the application and the NRC must continue to review it. Less than 2 months later, the question was put to a vote of the full Commission. On August 10th, Commissioner Apostolakis abstained. On August 25th and 26th, Commissioner Savinky, Yasko, and Ostendorf voted. Then, August 30th, Chairman Yasko retracted his vote. Then, September 15th, Commissioner Magwood voted. Then, October 29th, Chairman Yasko voted again. But somehow, 10 months after all that, the vote is still not over. You don't need internal Commission procedures to see that it's been a horribly inefficient process. And according to Mr. Bell's report, we have no one to blame except Chairman Yasko. But there are internal Commissioner proceedings. Commissioners are to vote within 10 business days. Once a quorum has voted, permission to vote late may be granted by a majority of the Commission, and a delay in affirming the vote and promulgating the order may only be granted by a majority of the Commission. None of that has been followed. It's the Chairman's duty to make certain it is followed. Parties to the action rely on the Commission to follow its own rules and keep the trains running on time. The Chairman's neglect of his duty alone is shocking, as it denies to the parties of interest a full, timely determination. But once you read further in the report, it becomes clear that the problems are worse than just inefficiency, and even worse than neglect of duty. There is outright malfeasance. The report is replete with instances of Chairman Yasko deliberately misleading both his fellow commissioners and senior staff at the NRC, and he knowingly withheld crucial information from his fellow commissioners, even though the federal statute requires that all commissioners have access to all information. In some instances, Chairman Yasko manipulated the process through outright false statements to prevent his full commissioners from understanding the implications of his actions and omissions. When confronted by one commissioner about this, Chairman Yasko merely insulted his colleague by sarcastically retorting, "You should have asked." I hope all members study Mr. Bell's June 6th report carefully and take time today to seek any clarifications. This situation warrants our attention and best judgment. Gentleman then yields back his time. Chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding us here today, and thank Mr. Bell for appearing before the committee to discuss your report entitled NRC Chairman's Unilateral Decision to Terminate NRC's Review of the DOE Yucca Mountain Repository License Application. There has been a lot of discussion in this committee on the decision by the administration not to proceed with Yucca Mountain. And I've stated several times before, the U.S. alone produced 806 billion kilowatt hours of nuclear power in 2008, making us the biggest producer of nuclear power in the world. Now, 25 years later, $15 billion of ratepayers' fees and income taxes, we're closing our only long-term solution for nuclear waste. The President has said he supports investments in alternative forms of energy, and Secretary Chu has testified before this committee that we would be unable to meet the President's goals if we do not continue to invest in nuclear power. As we look forward and focus on investing more in nuclear power, we still have radioactive waste. Even if we have better short-term storage than we do now, we still need somewhere to put the waste 50 or 1,000 years from now. Today we'll be discussing the NRC's Inspector General's report on the NRC Chair's decision to terminate the NRC's review of Yucca Mountain. Many allegations have been made on the legality of the NRC chair's decision to terminate the NRC's review. This report evaluated two allegations. One, that Chairman unilaterally and improperly closed the NRC review of Yucca Mountain application while the government was still operating under a continuing resolution in fiscal year 2011. And two, the chairman is preventing the Commission from ruling on the NRC Licensing Board's decision to deny the DOE's motion to withdraw the Yucca application. The Inspector General's report found that Chairman Yasko had not been forthcoming with all the commissioners, but that ultimately acted within his authority as NRC chair, and none of which suggests the NRC chair violated the law. The report does not review whether or not the actual decision to close Yucca was appropriate. The report does shed some light on the obvious internal issues within the NRC that should be evaluated and addressed. And just on a personal note, it is frustrating, our country being the largest emitter of nuclear waste in the world, and we're seeing us literally eclipsed by countries who do not have as much nuclear powers as we do, and it's frustrating after all these years. With that, again, I want to thank Mr. Bell for appearing before the committee. I look forward to hearing your testimony. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Chair now recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Upton, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Developing a safe, permanent storage site for spent nuclear fuel is indeed essential to energy security as well as our national security, and that is not and should not be treated as a partisan issue. So I commend and thank our witnesses for their efforts to provide an objective look at the inner workings of this key agency. The more we learn about NRC's current leadership, the greater our concern about the apparent breakdown in the agency's operations, departure from nonpartisan tradition, and disregard for the decades of technical expertise and billions of dollars invested. Justice delayed is justice denied, and it has been a year since states and other affected parties went to court seeking a ruling on the license application for the repository at Yucca. The Atomic Safety and Licensing Board ruled that the NRC must consider and vote on DOE's application, yet the Commission still has not yet taken final action. And after a year in limbo, it now appears that the NRC chair, Yatsko, devised a complex, calculated strategy to kill the license application without consideration by the Commission. Consumers have been paying into the nuclear waste fund since 1983 with a promise of something in return, a permanent place to send the spent fuel away from the reactor sites. When the license application was fully filed 3 years ago, we grew more confident. The Act said that in 3 years, the NRC would grant the license or explain to Congress why they needed more time. Instead, NRC won't even give a straight answer about whether the application is still alive. And it's not just nuclear power consumers who are cheated. It's taxpayers in every state, including Nevada, who are paying out judgments to plant operators because the DOE is late accepting the waste. GAO reports that the taxpayers are on the hook for an additional $15.4 billion on top of the nearly $15 billion already spent on the project. And that's the liability if DOE opens Yucca by 2020. If not, it rises another $500 million every year. The circumstances surrounding this administration's rush to pull the plug on Yucca are alarming as much as they are disappointing. We have an administration that apparently wants to erase the visionary effort launched by President Reagan, casting aside 3 decades of scientific research, bipartisan collaboration, and a fortune invested to start from scratch no matter what the cost or consequences to our national security. Despite this moment of dysfunction at the top, the NRC's intrinsic value to the U.S. lies in the expertise and extraordinary dedication of its highly professional staff, including our witnesses today. To them we repeat, we will do what we can to rescue the agency from the ditch that some have driven you into. And to consumers and taxpayers across America, we will get the NRC to focus once again on its statutory mission to serve all the people instead of perhaps the chairman's political patrons, and I yield to Mr. Whitfield.
Thank you very much. In January 2009, President Obama made this statement, let me say it as simply as I can, transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstone of this presidency. And yet when you read the Inspector General's report of Chairman Jasko's actions, you see words like misleading, withholding information, false statements. That is not the type of transparency that we need in America today. And I would like to reiterate what Chairman Upton said. This is more than just about Chairman Jasko. This is about the American people and the American taxpayer who've already spent over $10 billion preparing Yucca Mountain, who now have been sued by utility companies and owe them an additional $15 billion, and that is increasing every year because the government cannot meet its obligations, primarily because of one person at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission whose personal objective is to close this project at Yucca Mountain. And so I think it's an abuse of his authority, and I look forward to the testimony of all the witnesses today. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Chair recognizes the Chairman Emeritus, Mr. Waxman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the third hearing this subcommittee has held on the closure of the Yucca Mountain Waste Repository. Today we will hear from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's Inspector General, who has recently issued a report on allegations that the NRC chairman's actions relating to the closure were improper. The primary finding of the Inspector General's report was that Chairman Jasko's ambitions have been consistent with established law, OMB guidance, and his authorities as chairman. This finding is very different from what Chairman Shimkus has been saying for months. In the press and in this hearing room, he has repeatedly stated that Chairman Jasko has been acting illegally. This is, of course, the problem with prejudging and announcing the outcome of an investigation before it has started. Despite the rhetoric we've heard over the past months, today we won't be presented with evidence of law-breaking. Instead, we'll hear about internal procedures of the NRC. We'll examine the consultation requirements and functions of the chairman of the NRC versus the functions of the other commissioners. The IG would tell us that some commissioners felt misled by Chairman Jasko, did not like his interpersonal style, and expressed concern about the NRC's chairman's unilateral actions. Now, these are legitimate issues for our subcommittee to examine. We should be exercising our oversight to look at the Commission to ensure that it operates as smoothly, professionally, and fairly as possible. The chairman of the Commission, like the chairman of a congressional subcommittee or committee, has an obligation to conduct proceedings fairly and impartially. Chairman Shimkus is concerned that Chairman Jasko withheld information from his fellow commissioners. That's a legitimate concern and one we should examine today. Ironically, however, we should look at this in the context of how our committee has operated. Over our objections, the staff of our subcommittee has been conducting interviews of fact witnesses without including Democratic members or our staff. The chairman says that the IG report, quote, reveals a calculating and political NRC chairman who has abused his authority and withheld information from fellow commissioners. Well, that's how some of us feel when we are being treated in this investigation by denying us access to witness interviews. Let's make sure that our committee operates as a model if we're going to criticize the Commission for not operating as we would hope they would. I look forward to hearing from the IG today and want to reiterate that I support a thorough investigation into the Yucca Mountain and the actions of the NRC. But any such investigation should be fair and nonpartisan, and I would hope our committee will meet this standard. Yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. The chair now calls for today's witness, the Honorable Hubert T. Bell, Inspector General of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. He is accompanied by Mr. Joseph McMillan, Assistant Inspector General for the Investigations at the NRC, and Ms. Rosanna Raspa, Senior Level Assistant for Investigative Operations in the Office of Inspector General. As you know, the testimony that you are about to give is subject to Title 18, Section 1001 of the United States Code. When holding an investigative hearing, this committee has a practice of taking testimony under oath. Do you have any objection to testifying under oath? and both shake their head no. The chair then advises you that under the rules of the House and the rules of the committee, you are entitled to be advised by counsel. Do you desire to be advised by counsel during your testimony today? And the chair recognizes that all shake their head no. In that case, if you would please rise and raise your right hand, and I will swear you in. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. And now you may give your 5-minute summary of your written statement. Welcome.
Good morning again. Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, it is my pleasure to appear before you today. With me are Mr. Joseph McMillan, Assistant Inspector General for Investigations, and Ms. Rosanna Rasper, Senior Level Assistant for Investigative Operations. The mission of the Office of Inspector General at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is to assist NRC by ensuring integrity, efficiency, and accountability in the agency's programs. My office carries out this mission by independently and objectively conducting and supervising audits and investigations related to NRC's programs and operations, preventing and detecting fraud, waste, and abuse, and promoting economy efficiency and effectiveness in NRC programs and operations. My operating budget is $10.86 million with 58 full-time employees. Last week, my office issued a report conveying the results of an investigation into an allegation that the NRC chairman unilaterally and improperly closed out NRC's review of the Department of Energy's Yucca Mountain repository application while the government was operating under a continuing resolution during FY 2011 and was purposely preventing the Commission from completing its ruling on the Atomic Safety Licensing Board's decision to deny DOE's motion to withdraw its Yucca Mountain repository license application from NRC. OIG also looked into concerns raised about the chairman's management style and whether his control of information prevents the other commissioners from effectively fulfilling their statutory responsibility to address policy matters. The Nuclear Waste Policy Act of 1982 as amended named Yucca Mountain as a single candidate site for a geological high-level radioactive waste repository. The Act states that the NRC will consider an application for construction of a repository and issue a final decision within 3 years of the application submission. NRC accepted DOE's Yucca Mountain license applications in September 2008 and planned at the end of the technical review to issue a Safety Evaluation Report, SER, containing its findings on the repository design. In February 2010, the Energy Secretary noted during a Senate hearing that the administration would seek to suspend licensing for the Yucca Mountain repository because it was not a workable option. In March 2010, DOE submitted to the ASLB a motion to withdraw its Yucca Mountain license application, which the ASLB denied. The Commission chose to review the ASLB's decision, and in August 2010 began consideration of this adjudicatory matter. On September 30th, Congress issued a continuing resolution directing federal agencies generally to spend money at 2010 levels to continue 2010 projects and activities. On October 4th, 2010, NRC senior officials issued a memorandum directing staff to continue its activities on the Yucca Mountain license application during the CR period in accordance with the Commission's FY 2011 Congressional Budget Justification. That document directed work related to the orderly closure of agency's Yucca Mountain license support activities. Soon after, the chairman directed staff to stop working on the SCR and proceed to orderly closure of the program. OIG learned that the CR budget guidance memorandum language directing staff to follow FY 2011 budget guidance for high-level waste program activities was based on instruction from the chairman's office. OIG found that the chairman used the memorandum to initiate NRC's FY 2011 plans to close out his Yucca Mountain license application review, although the budget had not been passed. The chairman's decision was supported by the NRC General Counsel and consistent with discretion within the chairman's budget execution authority on the reorganization plan number 1 of 1980, OMB budget guidance for CR spending, the administration's decision to terminate the Yucca Mountain repository project, and the chairman's interpretation of the commission's FY 2011 budget policy decisions. OIG also found that while the chairman had the authority to direct staff to follow the FY 2011 budget guidance, he was not forthcoming with the other commissioners about his intent to stop work on the SCR as part of implementing closeout activities. Although he told the Executive Director of Operations that all commissioners were informed and supported issuance of the CR Budget Guidance Memorandum, a majority agreed with the outcome of the memorandum, disagreed with the outcome of the memorandum, which was the chairman's direction to stop work on the SCR. Also, a majority of the commissioners did not think the conditions to proceed to closure had been met. Although one commissioner wrote a commission action memorandum, a COM, to the other commissioners on October 6, proposing to direct staff to continue working on the SCR, two commissioners elected not to vote on the matter. Without a majority, the commission could not move the matter to policy space within the commission's purview. OIG found that various factors are preventing NRC from fulfilling its statutory obligation to review DOE's Yucca Mountain Repository license application and issue a final decision concerning issuance of a construction authorization. Factors include the administration's decision to terminate the Yucca Mountain Repository project, decrease in appropriations to NRCs for a high-level waste program, and the chairman's directions to start working on SCR. OIG found that the Commission's adjudicatory voting procedures are not consistently enforced, and they do not provide details on the process that occurred between completion of a notation vote on an adjudicatory matter and the conduct of an affirmation vote. The lack of enforcement of and specificity in the Commission's procedures, coupled with the Commission's practice not to move to affirmation until all commissioners agree to the affirmation notice and order, allows matters to sit in abeyance without final Commission action. OIG also found that the chairman controls the information provided to the other commissioners based on his interpretation of his statutory authority as chairman versus authority given to the commission. Because the chairman manages and controls information available to the other commissioners, they are uncertain as to whether they are adequately informed on policy matters that should be brought to their attention. Ultimately, however, all commissioners have the ability to bring any issue they perceive as a policy matter before the commission by writing a commission action memorandum and gaining majority commission support. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, we'd be pleased now to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bell. Now I recognize before that, I ask unanimous consent that the contents of the document binder be introduced into the record and to authorize staff to make any appropriate redactions. Without objection, the document will be entered into the record with any redactions the staff determines are appropriate. Now I recognize myself for the first 5 minutes. Again, Mr. Bell, thank you. Mr. Bell, how many interviews did you conduct for this investigation?
39 total, sir.
39 total. And they were transcribed interviews under oath, is that correct?
The majority were, I think, maybe one or two were not transcribed. They're all under oath.
They're all under oath.
Yes, but I think all but two were transcribed.
And did you review documents as well?
Yes, we did.
So your report is based on documentary evidence and sworn testimony, both in its narrative and in its findings, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And this evaluation was conducted independently, without any direction or interference from outside of the Office of the Inspector General?
That's correct, sir.
Mr. Bell, you investigated the chairman's decision to close down the staff's safety evaluation of the Yucca license during a continuing resolution last October, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you determined the senior NRC staff expressed concerns that the whole commission needed to be on board with guidance to this effect.
Yes, sir.
And the chairman told senior staff he would inform the commission and later said the commissioners were in agreement with the direction and implications of the direction. Is that the case?
That's the case, yes, sir.
But the chairman did not ensure the other commissioners understood the implications of this guidance, did he?
The inference that the chairman had told the commission was that before he issued any memorandum, that the commissioners, all the commissioners would be informed. And this was done either via himself having conversations with the commissioners or the chief of staff, his chief of staff, talking to the commission officers that he had not personally spoken with or discussed it with.
But under your report, let me ask this again. Chairman Yasko did not ensure that each commissioner understood the implications of the guidance.
No.
In fact, according to your investigation, the chairman was not forthcoming with the commissioners. He did not even talk to one of them, and he did not explicitly explain his plans to direct the shutdown of the Yucca review. Is that what you found?
That's correct, sir.
Is the reorganization plan of 1980 as amended the statutory guidance under which the NRC operates?
Yes.
According to the NRC's statutory requirements in this plan, the chairman, and I quote, shall be responsible for ensuring that the commission is fully and currently informed about matters within its functions. Isn't that correct?
That's what the reorganization plan states, yes, sir.
That is an essential responsibility of the chairman as laid out in the law, correct?
Correct.
According to your investigation, the chairman strategically, and I'm quoting from your investigation, strategically provided 3 of the 4 commissioners with varying amounts of information about his intention to not complete the safety evaluation report. That is what you determined, correct?
That's what the investigation showed, yes, sir.
And that's what you determined as the author. Now, is strategically withholding information from different commissioners consistent with, and I'm quoting back to the law, ensuring that the commission is fully and currently informed?
That doesn't appear to be, no, sir.
From your investigation, it became clear that many staff, including senior staff and the majority of the commissioners, considered the Yucca-related guidance and directives imposed by the chairman to be a policy matter. Isn't that correct?
A policy matter, correct.
At page 42, you write that the chairman himself, and I'm quoting again, knew the commission did not support the budget guidance for the high-level waste program and that he wanted to be prepared for battle. So even the chairman recognized this would be a policy fight, not an administrative matter, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree that the decisions surrounding the Yucca Mountain application review have profound national policy implications? Wouldn't you agree that it is a policy matter?
It is a policy matter, sir.
What we see here, in fact, was a matter of national policy which the chairman tried to manipulate into a mere administrative matter solely within his control. Is this consistent with the statutory obligations for how to formulate policy?
No, sir.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to yield 5 minutes to the ranking member, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your investigation evaluated 2 allegations that Chairman Yasko unilaterally and improperly closed out the NRC review of the Yucca Mountain application while the government was operating under a continuing resolution in fiscal year 2011, and 2, that the chair is preventing the commission from ruling on NRC licensing board decision to deny the DOE's motion to withdraw the Yucca. You found that the chairman had not been forthcoming with all commissioners, but ultimately acted within his authority. Did your office evaluate whether it was appropriate to close the Yucca Mountain facility generally?
No, sir.
Okay. Does your report say it was wrong to close the Yucca Mountain facility?
No, does not. No, sir.
And I didn't see it in your report, but this is the second time I've noticed that an administration taking leave under a continuing resolution, I would say. Did your investigation discuss anything about an administration using, I guess, very liberally interpreting a continuing resolution? It may not have been successful in Congress.
No, no, sir.
Some of my colleagues have charged the chair and decided to close out the Yucca Mountain licensing review process for some nefarious purpose, and some allege it was done directly at the behest of the president for political purposes. In your investigation, you find any indication that the president reached out to the chairman and personally asked him or contacted him to stop reviewing the Yucca Mountain application?
No, sir.
This report identifies some serious communication issues within the commission, and I think we need to take those seriously. The report does not, however, find illegal conduct, nor does it make any assertions more generally about whether the administration's decision to close Yucca was proper. I do think, Mr. Chairman, our committee needs to look at what the NRC and frankly, I think it's general government, not just our committee. There have been a case, and I know some folks, I've watched what happened with NASA last year. Some decisions were made based on the president's budget that did not pass the House of Representatives or the Senate, and yet they made these administrative decisions to change programs. I think that might be the problem we have, and I think whether it be the NRC or even other agencies, I think they need to come back to Congress before they make these decisions, particularly on after $15 billion of ratepayers and taxpayers' money has been put into it, and after 25 years of work, all of a sudden, a year ago, say, well, we're not going to accept that. So that's our problem. I think Congress needs to take away that authority that they're using.
The gentleman yield for 1 second?
Be glad to.
Kind of follow up on that. And in this case, if there is a policy decision that should be made, it should be made by the commissioners collectively. Wouldn't you say that's correct, Mr. Bell? A policy decision.
All decisions should be a commission.
So, and that's another way. If there's, this is
Yeah.
a commission, so the commission should all have a say when there's a change in policy, and it's our contention, and I think the report defends it, that policy decisions were made by the chairman.
Well, and I agree, it should be the commission, but ultimately on something this major, I think we ought to have the opportunity as elected officials to make that decision, because again, the appropriations for $15 billion for the last 25 years at least. And I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Chair recognizes the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Upton, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you too, Mr. Bell, for the report. President Reagan, as we know, signed the Nuclear Waste Policy Act back in 1982, almost 30 years ago. And in reading, again, the Commercial Nuclear Waste GAO report from this last April, I want to read to you one long paragraph. Prolonging on-site storage would add to the taxpayer burden by increasing the substantial liabilities that DOE has already incurred due to on-site storage at commercial nuclear reactors. Were DOE to open Yucca in 2020 as it had planned and begun taking custody of spent nuclear fuel, it would still have taken decades to take custody of the entire inventory of spent nuclear fuel. Assuming a 2020 opening of Yucca, DOE estimated that the total taxpayer liabilities for the backlog as of 2020 would be about $15.4 billion. It would increase by $500 million for each year of delay thereafter. It is important to recognize that these liabilities are outside of the nearly $15 billion already spent on developing a repository, and the estimated $41 to $67 billion still to be spent if Yucca Mountain Repository were to be constructed and become operational, most of the cost of which is borne by the Nuclear Waste Fund. So nearly $100 billion at the end of the day. In reading the report this weekend, I want to read just a couple comments on 3 commissioners. The first is Commissioner Magwood, who on page 17, you write, Magwood also told the chairman that he would not support a precipitous termination of the high-level waste program. According to Commissioner Magwood, the chairman assured him that this was not the expectation. Going further, according to Commissioner Magwood, the chairman became very agitated and said that he would never have taken these actions had both Commissioners Apostolakis and Magwood not agreed to support the guidance. Commissioner Magwood said he objected to the statement quite strongly and that the chairman never told him his plan had been to shut down the high-level waste program and withhold publication of SCR Volume 3. Then on Commissioner Ostendorf, you write on page 18, Commissioner Ostendorf stated that on October 1st, 2010, Chairman Yatsko told him that the CR budget guidance memo would have the staff commence orderly closure of Yucca license application review. Ostendorf told the chairman that he disagreed with his direction. The direction was wrong, and he should not issue it. And as it relates to the third commissioner, Mr. Savinicki, you write on page 19, on October 5th, her staff informed Chairman Yatsko's office that she objected to the CR guidance. She stated that she did not have any direct communication with Chairman Yatsko regarding the matter before the CR budget guidance memo was issued on October 4th, 2010. So can one come to a different conclusion than there were at least 3 votes in opposition of where they ultimately were, and it is a pretty damning report as it relates to his control of these 3 commissioners who in fact said on the record that they didn't agree. Can one come to a different conclusion?
I'll let Ms. McMillan answer.
Clearly, each of those commissioners, sir, thought that the budget guidance memorandum that was being circulated would not stop the SER from progressing. While the commission might very well be moving towards closure of the program itself, in each of those cases, when the individuals were interviewed, it was their impression that the SER would, in fact, be continued.
But was it not the fact that the staff review of the SER plan was going to be expedited, and it was Chairman Yatsko who said slow down?
That is correct. There was a meeting in the June timeframe of 2010 when the staff went to the chairman and indicated a desire to advance SERs related to numbers 1 and 3. The issues related to volumes 1 and 3. And the chairman did indicate to the staff that he wanted to maintain the published schedule that was in the record at that time. And that was their understanding, that they would maintain the public schedule of timing.
What did the commissioners feel when they learned that the SER 3 decision had been withheld from them? What
Through
was
the
the
interviews,
reaction?
and again, staying within the context of the report, through the interviews, clearly the commissioners that we spoke to that had no understanding of this SER being stopped, okay, were somewhat agitated by that fact, and they did, in fact, raise the issues back with the chairman regarding their discussions that he had had and the indications that at no time did they understand that the SER and the findings in the SER would be stopped.
Chairman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes Chairman Emeritus Mr. Waxman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bell, over the last few months, the chairman of this subcommittee has told us that the NRC chairman acted illegally with regard to its handling of Yucca Mountain. Mr. Bell, you've conducted a 7-month investigation of this matter. Did you find that the chairman of the NRC acted illegally?
No, we didn't, sir.
Okay. Your report describes concerns raised by some commission staff that Chairman Yatsko controls and restricts the information provided to his fellow commissioners. Some of this appears to be due to a change in management style. For example, Chairman Yatsko has taken a more hands-on role in the budget process. As your report describes, the chairman meets with division directors to provide direction on the agency's priorities, and then each division formulates a budget document and submits it to the chairman, and the chairman sees the budget as his responsibility and says that he is entitled to develop the budget as he sees fit. Mr. Bell, although some staff and commissioners may not like this approach, does it mean it was illegal?
It's not illegal, and it's the prerogative of the chairman to direct the direction of the budget, and this chairman is elected to have the budget filtered through him and his office, and then he disseminates it back to the commission.
Now, Chairman Yatsko made a decision that there should be an orderly shutdown of Yucca Mountain because he did not think that the NRC was going to have enough funds to pursue the matter. Wasn't that decision vindicated by the continuing resolution passed overwhelmingly by the House and the Senate and signed by the President, where $10 million was provided to close out Yucca Mountain's consideration?
Obviously, yes, sir. In a decrease in the budget for the high-level waste program was one of the contributing factors to moving toward closeout because it eventually was a zero budget for high-level waste.
So the chairman made a decision about the budget, and others might not have agreed with it, but he made that decision, and it looked like it was vindicated by the actions of the Congress. Similarly, the chairman has taken a more active role in the planning of the commission's agenda. At times, he's directed staff to not develop an issue paper for review of the whole commission. At other times, he's determined that an issue paper is an administrative matter not a policy matter worthy of consideration by the Commission. The IG report states that the chairman wants to control the flow of policy issues to the Commission to allow them to be more efficient. Of course, some disagree and see this as a means to limit the information available to other commissioners. Mr. Bell, although some staff and commissioners may not like this chairman's approach, does that mean it is illegal?
It's not illegal because I remember I said that any commissioner has an opportunity to write a COM and get a majority vote on the COM, and then it moves from a policy space to commission space. But you have to have a majority commission agree with the COM. So what the chairman has done is nothing, he's not done anything illegal, but the commission knows, each commissioner knows, if they want to move an issue from the chairman's purview to the commission's purview, then they have to get a majority vote by writing a COM and having the commissioners vote on it. To date, that hasn't been done.
What is a COM?
A communication memorandum of an issue that they want to bring forward.
I see. So they could have acted to take this issue away from the chairman, but they did not.
They can take any issue that they get a consensus on, a majority vote on, and move it from the chairman's purview to the commission agenda.
Okay. It seems to me that the chairman's interpretation of his role and responsibilities differs from how other commissioners see his role and responsibilities. This seems to me appear to be the root cause of the conflict. Your report, Mr. Bells, also notes that Chairman Yasko has a bad temper and created what some employees describe as an, quote, intimidating work environment, end quote. And the Chairman, Yasko, admits in the report to having a short fuse, especially with his fellow commissioners. Mr. Bell, obviously he should work on his interpersonal skills at the office, but does this mean his behavior is illegal?
No.
You know, I could just say from my own experience, I serve on this committee. I know my colleagues in a professional way. I'm surprised when I hear that some of them have a huge temper and they're rude to their staffs. I'm shocked when I hear that some of the colleagues that I serve with on the committee might Twitter things to people. I just don't have any knowledge of it. But I guess that members of this commission and the staff noticed his poor interpersonal skills. Not admirable, is it? That's, I guess, a rhetorical question, Mr. Bell. Mr. Green said that the report does not find illegal conduct, nor does it make any assertion more generally about whether the administration's decision to close Yucca Mountain repository was proper. Is that an accurate statement? Shall I repeat it?
Yeah, repeat that again, sir.
He said that the report does not find illegal conduct, nor does it make any assertion more generally about whether the administration's decision to close Yucca Mountain was proper.
Yes, that's accurate.
And then Mr. Green went on to say, I do think Congress needs to address the issue, but Congress did address the issue in the continuing resolution.
Gentleman's time is
Is that a correct
clear.
statement? Congress did?
You can answer him, Mr. Bell.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair now recognizes the Chairman Emeritus of the full committee, Mr. Barton, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know where these rumors come from that members have tempers. That must be on the minority side. We're all peace and light and sunshine on the majority side. You know, so.
I read a Twitter about it.
You read a Twitter about it? We will investigate those rumors, Chairman Waxman, get to the bottom of it. I want to put into the record, Mr. Chairman, an article from the December 2010 periodical called Waste Management. It is it's part of the Nuclear News magazine, and it refers to former Chairman Dale Klein's comments. He wrote an open letter to the commission and to several journalists about this issue that we're debating today or investigating today. And I'll put the entire article in the record, but part of his open letter states, and I quote, this is former NRC Chairman Dale Klein, that there was no intention by the Commission, by that he means the NRC, to approve or even contemplate a preemptive termination of the high-level waste program, end quote. I would ask that this be put into the record.
Is there objection?
We'll certainly give.
Hearing none, so ordered.
Okay. Now, I've read the executive summary, Mr. Bell, of your investigatory report, and I listened as you answered some questions from Chairman Waxman. It's my understanding that one of your conclusions is that while Chairman Jasko didn't act appropriately, it's your opinion that he did not violate any law. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah. I have a different opinion, and I'm not an inspector general, so my opinion is just that, an opinion. I think it's an informed opinion, but I have read the statute that applies to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and it has language that says the chairman, and I quote, must fully inform other commissioners of all pending actions. You yourself in your report says that Chairman Jasko, I believe, said misled, but he certainly didn't fully inform all the other commissioners. How can you then state, if that's a true statement, how can he not have violated federal law?
Sir, what we're attempting to convey in the report was the fact that if the commissioners on the commission wanted to move his decision from budget space to policy space, there was a mechanism by which to do that. And clearly, Commissioner Ostendorf attempted to do that with his comm in October, shortly after the CR
But it's not,
memorandum guidance.
it's not the, how can you put the burden on a commissioner if the chairman has the information and the chairman doesn't fully inform the other commissioners? I mean, how can you then put the burden of proof, so to speak, on an uninformed, unaware commissioner?
There was a responsibility to ensure all the commissioners understood the purpose of the budget guidance memorandum. That clearly was a responsibility of the chairman.
And y'all, if I understand your report correctly, he failed that responsibility. Is that not correct?
The report reflects the fact that the commissioners that were involved in that process went to the chairman and indicated that had they known that the SCR was going to be stopped, that they would not have even given tacit approval towards moving that document.
So that would appear to me to factually prove that he violated the law. I mean, I don't know how you can have it any other way.
Well,
He's got an obligation under law to fully inform the commissioners. Your own report indicates that he didn't fully inform. The commissioner said that had they known, they would have taken preemptive action to prevent what he did. He violated the law. He did not uphold his responsibility under the statute. That is clear, layman, common sense. I think, my time's expired. I've got two more things I want to state. Before you issued this report about him not violating the law, did you check with outside legal counsel on that issue?
no, we didn't.
Did not. So this is an internal decision. What is your opinion, Mr. Inspector General? As of right now, the licensing application for Yucca Mountain, is it active? Has it been terminated? Should it still be acted upon? What's the legal standing given that the Construction Authorization Board refused to allow the Department of Energy to withdraw that application?
Well, ASLBP denied the appeal. So the application is still before the commission. And until
So it is active. It should be acted upon. The commission should make a decision on it.
Correct.
Is that not correct? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Colorado, Mr. Gett, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bell, in the beginning of your report, you provide some historical background for the structure of the NRC, and more specifically for the chairman's authority. I think this is important based on the last questioning. I understand that when the commission was established, much of the power was evenly distributed among the commissioners. Is that correct?
Under the reorganization,
Under the original structure of the commission, much of it was evenly distributed,
Yes.
right?
yes.
And then it was changed, and it was changed because of 3 Mile Island. Was that right?
Correct.
And after 3 Mile Island, both the Presidential Commission and an NRC commissioned review identified issues with that structure I described with the equal power, and so they completely overhauled the commission structure. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, can you talk to me for a minute about some of the expanded duties and responsibilities of the chairman under that reorganization plan in 1980?
Yes.
Specifically, ma'am, under
McMillan?
Section 2 of the reorganization plan, it assigns the chairman responsibility for all functions, serving as the commission spokesman, serving as the commission's principal executive officer responsible for developing policy planning and guidance for consideration by the commission. It also assigns him the responsibility of administrative functions of the commission, distribution of business among the officers of the commission and preparation of the budget estimates, and then propose the distribution of appropriated funds. The reorg plan states that the chairman determines the use and expenditure of funds of the commission in accordance with the distribution of appropriated funds. So clearly, he's got some unique responsibilities and duties that
Right.
are different than those of other commissions.
He's got additional responsibilities and duties.
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that plan was approved by Congress, as I understand it.
Yes, ma'am.
1980,
It was approved in 1980. Thank you.
reorganization.
And so really to say that what may or may not have happened in this situation with Chairman Yasko is illegal is probably inaccurate. And I think you've answered that about 10 times. Is that correct, Mr. Bell?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a suggestion, and Mr. Murphy will tell you we had a very, very informative trip last week where we looked at nuclear disposal, permanent and studies for permanent, and also reprocessing and interim disposal. And I've been interested in this issue for many, many years, ever since I went to Yucca Mountain with Chairman Emeritus Barton, and I've been thinking, irrespective of what you think about the issue of nuclear energy for this country as a policy, the fact is that we have to grapple with this. And we have to grapple with it in a way that is science-based, not in a way that's based on politics. And the concern I have is that in this country, much of what we've done, and you can argue on either side of the aisle who's more at fault, is we base our issues on how we should dispose of the current and future nuclear waste on politics and not on science where it will work. And so I guess my suggestion would be, look, we're in a situation right now where we had looked at Yucca Mountain. They were undergoing their scientific studies. The last administration tried to expedite the certifications, even though the studies weren't over, and now this administration has shut it down. And we can argue back and forth whether what the chairman did was illegal or just wrong, or maybe not wrong at all, or maybe a miscommunication. We can argue about all of that, but the truth is we now don't have a permanent facility that's either certified or under certification process. And it seems to me that that would be a very fertile area for us to look at in this committee, because at some point, irrespective of how we decide to take our nuclear power, or our nuclear energy policy in the future, we're going to have to grapple with this. And so that would be my suggestion. We can waste a lot of time arguing about these details, or we can move forward and say, what are we going to do now coming from where we come? Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back her time, and I would just say that the delay of the SEER report is a delay of science-based information for Yucca. That's part of this whole debate, is the SEER report, which has been delayed. And I yield 5 minutes to the Vice Chairman of the committee, Mr. Murphy, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly it is important from my friend from Colorado that this is important to adhere to scientific information because the implications are not only what happens to Yucca Mountain, but this impacts the credibility of the NRC on many issues of licensing. So, Mr. Bell, last week Chairman Yasko issued a press release claiming your office has exonerated him of any wrongdoing. I'm not certain, but the report really supports that interpretation. So let me ask this. First of all, in the matter of the continuing resolution budget guidance issued unilaterally by the chairman, your report makes it clear that the senior career NRC managers and other commissioners, and even the chairman himself, believed it to be a policy matter. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in fact, on page 22 of your report, you say that the chairman told the executive director of operations, quote, "There may be commissioners who don't agree with this and will try to make it a policy issue," unquote. Your report states that the EDO had already advised the chairman that this was a policy matter, and on page 15, and therefore it should have been brought before the commission. Is that correct?
Yes.
I believe the example, the quote on page 15 is that, quote, "He believed that if the commissioners decided the matter was a policy issue, they could vote on it. He said he expressed his concerns to the chairman that the commission needed to see the memorandum," unquote. Now, your report also details the efforts of the chairman and his staff made to mislead the commissioners, deny them the information they needed to make an informed decision, and prevent other commissioner views on this matter being considered. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, is it a crime to mislead?
It's not a crime, but it certainly it's not an upfront way to do business.
And is that
And also the exoneration, the chairman's statement was the chairman's statement. That we had no input or anything into the chairman's statement, so just for the record.
and is it against the law to overturn a statute that Congress has passed and the president has signed into law?
No,
It's not a crime, not illegal to do that?
not if, you mean if Congress overturned it?
No, if the chairman, if there is a statement that says that the chairman and the executive director of operations to the chairman shall be responsible for ensuring that the commission is fully and currently informed about matters within its functions, and that was signed into law, and that is specifically categorically ignored, is that illegal?
It's wrong.
Okay. Is the chairman of the NRC statutorily required then under the reorganization plan of 1980 as amended to keep his fellow commissioners fully and currently informed?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So the chairman and executive director of the NRC are required under law, they just said, to keep the commission fully and currently informed of agency activities. Do you conclude from your investigation that this is currently happening? It's fully and currently informed that it is happening? Is that your conclusion, that it's fully happening or it's not happening?
They're not being fully informed, correct.
Okay.
I think the chairman has given them just enough information to proceed in the manner that he wanted to proceed with the.
But that's in the matter that the chairman wanted to
the budget.
proceed. But that's, from what you've said so far in a couple of cases now, that runs contrary to what the statute says that was passed by Congress and signed into law by President. So how does failure to follow statutory obligations exonerate the chairman's actions?
Go ahead.
My point is, given the statements made by Mr. Bell here in reference to this statute, my question then, how does failure to follow statutory obligations exonerate the chairman's actions?
The reorganization.
You have to put the microphone up close, ma'am.
The Reorganization Act is premised on keeping the commissioners informed. Sorry, keeping the commissioners informed of matters within their purview. And so they were aware of the chairman's actions. They didn't fully understand the implications of that CR budget memorandum.
But I did challenge that because Commissioner Magwood stated, quote, "The chairman never told him his plan had been to shut down the high-level waste program and withhold publication of SCR Volume 3. The chairman responded to him, 'You should have asked,' unquote." So is intent to mislead by withholding information to affect behavior and action on a policy matter, isn't this a violation of the statute?
What we attempted again, sir, to do was to lay out what transpired during the course of these sequence of events and leave the interpretations, whether regarding legality, okay, to others.
I understand.
Clearly, when you have.
Wait, I'm not asking about whether this is criminal or not, because that's a whole other legal issue.
Right.
The question is it a violation of the statute? Is it a violation of the statute in terms of what they actually did, what was actually done?
One could draw that conclusion that it's opposite the intent of that statute, yes.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Whitfield, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and Mr. Bell, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate it. I want to touch on initially the Department of Energy's motion to withdraw the application, which was denied by the appeal board. And then after that, and the subject of a lot of this is the fact that there's not been a final vote by the commission on whether or not to uphold the appeal board. And Chairman Ostendorf said, and I want to know if your investigation affirmed this, but he said that he went to Chairman Jasko on September the 9th, September the 14th, October the 5th, October the 19th, October the 27th, wanting to know when they were going to vote on this. Did your investigation affirm that?
Yes.
That he did talk to him on those occasions? Okay. And Chairman Jasko told him that he was delaying it because he was concerned that a 2-2 vote would leave the appeal board in limbo, the appeal board decision in limbo. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And some of the commission members felt like that a 2-2 vote would actually uphold the appeal board decision. Is that correct?
In most instances, a 2-2 vote does hold in limbo, so that is true.
So what did your investigation find out that Jasko was thinking about when he said it would leave the board in limbo, the decision in limbo?
Regarding the adjudicatory matter, we could only look into the process of their votes. We could not look at their thinking and what was behind their thinking in casting those votes.
But, okay, but a 2-2 vote upholds the board, and at least some people are saying that Jasko was saying, well, I didn't want to vote because I'm afraid a 2-2 vote would leave this in confusion. Okay, in addition to that, I've just read through some of this testimony or your report, and it says that Chairman Jasko controls and restricts information available to his fellow commissioners. Did you have people said that?
Yes, we had.
They view him as unprofessional and manipulative. Did you find that?
That was things that have been said also, yes.
They find that he suppresses papers and manipulates the agenda planning process because he wants to control the sequence of papers to be presented to the commission.
The chairman has also indicated that he is trying to prioritize those matters that become...
No, I'm not asking what he's trying to do. I'm just asking, was this told to you? It says here that you were told that the chairman withholds information to the commission by either suppressing papers or manipulating the agenda.
Yes, we were told that.
You were told that, okay. You were also told that the distinction between policy issues and administrative actions is a subject of contention within the commission. Is that correct?
Yes. That's correct, yes, sir.
And of course, the chairman would like for it, if he wants it to be administrative, then it's not a policy matter, so he would have more control over that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Anything that's not policy, he'd have.
Okay. And it says that some people have said that he acts in an unprofessional way, that he uses intimidation, that there's a work environment of intimidation. He yells at people. His tactics has a negative impact on the camaraderie in the office or in the agency. He rules by intimidation. His behavior creates an environment in which it is difficult for people to work with him. He even said that himself. And the thing that disturbs me about this, here you have a chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission that has such a dramatic impact on this country, that is now resulting in legal judgments against the federal government paid for by taxpayers. And the clear impression is that we have one chairman over there who's unprofessional, who intimidates, who manipulates, and this has all been testified to by people that you've interviewed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And would you say that the tenure of that would be a violation of the Energy Reorganization Act of 1974? If you're trying to have a collegial atmosphere and provide transparency and information, what's been testified to by these people, his actions would be violating that act, wouldn't it?
I don't think it violates the act. I think those, I mean, the judgment and the personality and everything that goes with his demeanor, at times people consider it unprofessional.
All right, I see my time's expired.
Gentleman's time expired. Chair recognizes gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Pitts, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bell, in your report, you asked the chairman to respond to your office on what, if any, action he intends to take in response to your investigation. To your knowledge, does the press release last week by Chairman Yasko that he was exonerated represent the views of the commission?
No, that's the chairman's press statement. That's his press release to the report.
Do you consider his press release an adequate response to your report?
That's not a response to me at all. That's just a press release that he issues publicly. So we've not had any correspondence with the chairman about the report yet.
What do you intend to do if the chairman fails to respond formally to your report?
I mean, the report stands on its own, and the report will stay open until we get some response. If we don't get a response, then the actual report itself will be closed until we get some notice from the chairman. It'll be an open report.
All right. Regarding the issuance of the CR guidance, the executive director for operations on page 15 said, quote, expressed his concerns to the chairman that the commission needed to see the memorandum, and the chairman told him the memorandum would not be issued until the other commissioners were on board with the memorandum language, end quote. The EDO went on to testify that, quote, the chairman told him that all 4 commissioners were in agreement with the language, end quote. Is that correct?
That's what we were told, yes.
Now, you conclude that the chairman selectively misled 3 commissioners, and to one commissioner he revealed nothing at all about the CR guidance to close out the Yucca review. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So someone's testimony appears to be false here. Either the EDO is misstating that he received this assurance from the chairman, or the chairman did not tell the truth to the EDO about having the agreement of the other commissioners. How do you reconcile this testimony?
The chairman did not recall when asked if he had communicated to the EDO and exactly what he had communicated in terms of giving him the green light to issue the CR memorandum. However, the EDO, as you've indicated, does say or did tell us that the chairman told him the memorandum could be issued. All were on board. He had spoken to all the commissioners, and therefore, based on that, he signed the CR memorandum.
Well, I think a question raised by this report here is that somebody is not telling the truth in this process. Your report lays out what people say, but you do not connect the dots. What are the next steps?
We cannot say that the chairman lied to us. He said he did not recall telling the what he told the EDO, quite frankly. That's in our report. There is a conflict, and sometimes you can't resolve that conflict.
Is this investigation continuing? Are there other facts and issues that you believe warrant investigation?
At this juncture, it's still listed as an open investigation. If something were to be presented to us that necessitated us looking at a particular issue related to the allegations themselves, and clearly we would take it under that context, you know, to assess. But as Ms. Rasmus said, occasionally in an investigation, as you're cognizant of, you can't always reconcile the testimonies between people. There was no anecdotal documentary evidence to line up specifically what the chairman recalled or did not recall in relationship to the EDO's testimony that it was in fact told to him. So that just was a point that we just could not resolve regarding that communication.
Well, it appears that Chairman Yasko has let politics trump science here, that he's manipulated the process. He's misled some of the fellow commissioners about the consequences of the actions that are taken, and I think the credibility of the NRC has been damaged. Its reputation's been damaged. There's some real serious questions about the agency's independence and scientific integrity, and I thank you for your testimony.
Gentleman's time expired. Chair recognizes gentleman Mr. Bass for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to follow up very quickly on a line of questioning that Mr. Pitts brought up at the beginning of his time. It's my understanding that the chairman of the NRC sent out a press release after this report was published exonerating himself. Is that the only response that he's required to make to your report?
He's not, the press release is not a response to my report. His response to my report has to be directed to me.
And he hasn't done that, right?
No, he hasn't done that. I mean, he has a, you know, we normally.
He has no obligation to either, right?
Well, no, we give an opportunity to respond, and we normally give 120 days.
Yeah. So if nothing happens in 120 days, it's the end, as far as you're concerned.
Well, it's the end of what we looked at.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. I have a couple of questions regarding control of commission information. Mr. Bell, is it your experience that under former chairman, staff could bring policy matters directly to the full commission, rather?
Under previous chairman?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it your experience that under previous chairman, it was the standard that staff could bring policy matters directly to the full commission?
I don't know firsthand, but it's never come to us in a manner that was disputed like this.
All right, fair enough. In your report under Chairman Jasko, the staff was not able to bring policy matters directly to the commission, were they?
Can I help clarify that
certainly.
to some degree? The staff has periodic meetings, okay, with all of the commissioners, including the chairman. And during the course of those meetings, a variety of issues are surfaced, which is coming from the staff in and of itself. It's just that the manner by which the current chairman handles the agenda, if you would, is where there's been some disconnects from previous chairmen in the commission itself.
Well, do you think that there was, do you think it's fair to say that the staff were constrained from communicating policy matters to the full commission, or on matters that the chairman may have had a disagreement with staff?
I think that, as Mr. McMillan indicated, the staff does communicate with each of the commissioners. They generally know what the staff may be working on. What becomes more difficult is when the staff is looking for guidance and wants to, for example, get a paper up to the commissioners, that process has to go through the EDO, who in turn has to go through the chairman. And it's at that point where, even though the commissioners know, they may not know always real time as items are coming up and how they're prioritized.
Do you think that the staff was constrained from communicating policy matters to commissioners at any time?
I'd say yes.
Okay, fair enough. According to your report on page 29, the Executive Director of Operations, EDO, said the chairman did not want any differences between his budget and staff's budget and saw it as his budget proposal. The chairman also wanted the opportunity to review and change any of the staff's responses to the commissioner's questions. Do you believe unilaterally editing staff information supplied to the commission is an appropriate way to manage agency information sharing?
Well, again, this chairman has operated differently than previous chairman. And previous chairman, it was a more open and collaborative discussion of the budget. This chairman has sought to take the budget as his responsibility and has taken full responsibility for it. I mean, if commission officers seek any information from any office, then all this information has to be filtered back through the chairman's office.
So in your
for
opinion,
response.
unilaterally editing staff information supplied to the commission is an appropriate way then to manage agency information?
No.
Okay, fair enough. Do you report, your report on page 37, that the chairman's budget estimate was submitted to the commission without fundamental supporting documents presented by the staff, is that correct?
Correct, but I think that has subsequently, through the general counsel, has advised the chairman's office that when he submits budget information to any of the offices, that there has to be supporting documentation to support the budget, or the appearance is everything is coming from the chairman himself. So I think the chairman has recognized that in the future, any budget items that go forward has to have some supporting documentation from the office that provided the budget information.
Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Chair recognizes gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Latta, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks very much for being here today. I tell you, sitting through these hearings, I've come to the conclusion if I was teaching federal administrative law in law school, I'd have the perfect case study to do. And also, having been a county commissioner back in the state of Ohio, where we actually had rules and regulations that we had to follow, this is amazing. And I know that Chairman Barton had expressed that in the last hearing, and I'm just astounded what I've been hearing today. And also, when I read the report, because I make lots of tabs and everything else. But if I could, the question is, you said it's the prerogative of the chair who gets the information. But, first of all, doesn't this board sit as a quasi-judicial board, Mr. Bell? Would it sit as a quasi-judicial board?
Quasi-judicial board?
Right. When it's making its rulings? And that it has to hear from all the parties and have to have the information come before the board?
I think the commission as a whole has to make a decision.
Right,
on
but
anything
the board makes a decision, but as it's quasi-judicial as it's doing this?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll agree with that.
And would you also say that the board needs to make, the commission needs to make timely actions on their actions when they have something come before it? Because if you don't, that justice delayed is justice denied in these cases? Would that be a fair statement?
Well, you think that within a certain time frame, after anything has happened, that you'd have motions going forward to end whatever it is you're in the process of doing.
Let me ask, and also following along then, when the commission's own internal procedures say the commissioner should vote within 10 business days and parties are waiting for the outcome, isn't holding a vote open for 10 months unfair in that situation?
Well, it seems unfair, but there's no, I mean, the voting process is very lax.
Okay.
And it's not enforced the way it should be.
And I found your report very, very interesting, because on page 36, when you're talking about the chairman told the OIG he did not recall the email from his chief of staff advising him not to request an extension to vote, and that he did not realize that an extension was required on adjudicatory matters if a vote was not cast within 10 days. He said that the commission does not always act in accordance with procedures. For example, the procedures say that the commission votes on matters within 10 days. But then he goes on, he said that the commission procedures are a guideline and not absolute rules, which takes us back to what's being said here earlier. Going back to the reorganization plan in Section 1, Section 2, it really lays out what the boards or the commission is supposed to be doing. Did the commission act the way it should have been acting under its own rules and regulations?
No. No.
Okay. Going on, on page 29, again, this report is just fascinating. Page 29, in talking, when you were interviewing Commissioner Osendorf, talking about what was going on July 11th, 2010, it says the general counsel, again, the general counsel, the attorney, told Commissioner Osendorf that it was his experience that there were certain issues the chairman does not want to hear from him on. He goes on to say, the conversation left him with the impression that there was possibly not an open environment for OGC to provide unfiltered advice to the chairman without fear of retribution. Is that the way that we have due process being carried out in one of our administrative boards or commissions here? Does that going back to the whole idea of due process and getting something done, did that occur with this under the policy of the commission?
No, that's what we were told. That, I mean, this is what Commissioner Ostendorf said, that the general counsel told him. So again, I mean,
Okay, because, and again, in your opening statement, again, intriguing. Page 7, again, in your opening statement, it's very interesting in the first full paragraph, when you said in the second line, OIG also found that although the chairman had authority to direct staff to follow the FY 2011 budget guide, he was not forthcoming with other commissioners about his intent to stop work on the SCR as part of implementing those closeout activities. So again, is that proper procedure under the law and under what they have as their rules and regulations at the NRC?
No.
Okay, and just real briefly, when you're saying not forthcoming, and we've heard the term by one of my fellow colleagues up here is talking about being misled, are we talking about a word that we should be, is it a lie to mislead? Is it a lie to not be forthcoming? Or are we just talking about what some people like to talk about back home when, or that they call it a lie back home, but here we're talking about a white lie?
Not for a characterization as to a white lie or an outright, it was clear that the commissioners that spoke with the agents conveyed the fact that they did not have all the information to believe that SCR was going to be stopped as a part of that budget guidance memorandum. That is factually what we were told by each of those commissioners that we interviewed. Now, the characterization as to his intentions behind it, his mens rea or thoughts about it, we didn't get into that, quite frankly, with regards to what we were trying to do was line up what occurred when and how did this document get out without their concurrence, if you would. And that's what they told us, is that they had no knowledge that the SCR was going to be stopped.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I see my time has expired and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Chair is going to ask unanimous consent that Mr. Markey be recognized for 5 minutes without objection. So ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. I find it highly ironic that we are having a hearing to express the majority's apparent surprise that matters related to Yucca Mountain are sometimes political. This issue has been nothing but political from the very beginning. The Department of Energy was supposed to select 2 scientifically appropriate sites, one east of Mississippi and one west of Mississippi River. But the Speaker of the House then said he didn't want it in Texas. That was one of the sites. The second site was in Washington State. The majority leader came from Washington State. He said, I don't want it in Washington State. It was out. The third state was the salt domes in Louisiana. The chairman of the Committee on Energy from the Senate said, I don't want it in Louisiana. The fourth site was in North Carolina. The ranking Republican on this committee said, I don't want it in North Carolina. Mississippi itself was a potential site, but they had a very powerful delegation at that time, and they said, we don't want it in Mississippi. And John Sununu, and as the governor of New Hampshire, on behalf of George Bush running for president in '88, said, we don't want it in the granite formations of New Hampshire. And so the nuclear queen of spades wound up, not on a scientific basis, but a political basis, political, in Nevada. That's how it all happened. I was here. I was saying, you make a political decision, you're going to wind up with big scientific problems at the end of the day, big scientific problems. So Congress actually, this committee barred the Department of Energy from looking at any other site other than Yucca Mountain. We used political science, not real science, to hand that nuclear queen of spades to Nevada. That's the legacy this committee left. The problem is that Yucca Mountain has 2 fault lines running through it and is in an active earthquake zone. There have been more than 600 earthquakes within 50 miles of the site within the past 20 years. We saw just how earthquakes can impact spent nuclear fuel in Japan just a few months ago. Moreover, in 1997, scientists found that plutonium from nuclear weapons tests that had been conducted just a few decades earlier had migrated a mile through water in the rock near Yucca Mountain, which contradicted earlier assertions that the repository site was geologically isolated from the water table. So basically, what we had was Congress writing a law that Yucca Mountain was a nuclear Alcatraz from which there could be no migration of this nuclear material. But scientists said it was more like a nuclear sieve. And we heard that from the National Academy of Sciences back then in 1987 and 86. We heard it from them here, but this committee and other committees ignored that warning. The Obama administration bravely recognized that moving forward with Yucca Mountain was not the scientifically appropriate dedication and direction to take. DOE withdrew its license application, and Congress started to slash funding for the project. Chairman Greg Yaskow then did what any permitting office would do when a building plan is canceled. He stopped spending money processing the permit. Although members of this committee have accused him of doing something illegal, the NRC Inspector General and General Counsel have both found that it was legal and entirely within his authority to do so. Mr. Bell, you said earlier that Chairman Yaskow's press release on your report was his alone and you had no input. But isn't it true that you and your deputy saw the statement before it went out from Chairman Yaskow, and you told the Chairman's Chief of Staff that you had no objections? Is that true?
No, that's not true. I read the statement, but I said that was his statement. We made no changes, nothing to the statement. I just saw the statement because he said he was going to put it out.
Did you say you had an objection to him putting it out?
I said I didn't oppose him releasing the statement.
You did not oppose to him in putting out that statement?
No, I mean.
Okay, great. So in finding number one, you said that commissioners, 2 of the commissioners didn't understand that when the chairman told them that he would be using the appropriations process to proceed with closure of the Yucca Mountain program, this meant that documents necessary for the Yucca Mountain license would cease being prepared. On page 23, your report notes that when Chairman Yaskow suspected that one of the commissioners didn't understand the discussion they had, he directed his staff to follow up with the commissioner's staff to be sure it was clear. Do you believe that Chairman Yaskow is responsible for a failure by other commissioners to understand their support for a document that said it would begin the closure of Yucca Mountain's technical review and adjudicatory activities when the license application was withdrawn, even after he tried to explain it to them?
Clearly, he said Chairman Yaskow is irresponsible.
Is it his fault that they didn't understand it? If they
He had a responsibility to ensure that they understood the context of the 4 squares of that piece of paper. And if they are saying, and what they relayed to us during the interviews, was they never came to understand that the SER, and I think sometimes there's a differences.
I have a hard time. Can I tell you the truth? I have a hard time when 2 commissioners on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission can't understand something this prosaic, this simple, when they have to understand the most complex nature of nuclear materials. So to say that they didn't understand something so fundamental, okay, as to the way in which the regulatory process works, in my opinion, they did not do their job. They did not, they had a responsibility after they were told that that was the route that they were going to get on. I thank the Chairman.
Right. Chair now recognizes gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Harper, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is that all right?
Mr. Bell, when the staff reported in March of 2010 to the Commission about their plans for completing the Yucca safety evaluations in tight budget constraints, their plans were to complete Volumes 1 and Volume 3 of the SCR not later than, I believe, August and November of 2010, respectively. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Now, according to your report, the EDO and technical staff believe that even if DOE were to withdraw the application, it would benefit the country to have completed the technical review. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
The most critical portion of the technical review, the SER Volume 3, was almost complete and on track to be completed well before November, according to staff. Is that correct?
Yes.
Completion by the end of August is consistent with a not later than November schedule reported to the Commission in March, isn't it?
Sir, and just on that last question
Yes,
with
sir.
regards to completion, that was not necessarily concurrence and approval. Okay, while it might very well have been completed by the staff to be forwarded up, it still had to go through a concurrence process, including OGC. So I just want to make sure we clarify that point.
Certainly, thank
you.
Now, when the chairman learned that the report could be ready in August before the fiscal year, is it true that he inserted himself into the process in June and directed staff to slow down?
He directed the staff to maintain the current published schedule with regards to the release of the various products.
Okay, but did he not, in fact, did you have an addition to that?
I would just note that the August timeframe was for Volume 1. It was not for Volume 3.
Okay.
Volume 3 was anticipated in November. However, the majority of the work had been done, and they believed they could get both volumes ahead of schedule.
Okay. But in
Would the
fact,
gentleman yield just for a second?
yes.
Just for 1 second. Which is amazing that a government agency would be good enough to move quickly instead of being way behind. So in that aspect, I would applaud the NRC for being prompt.
Okay. And I'll go back, Mr. Bell, and ask this. In fact, though, the chairman did direct staff to issue the SER Volume 3 not earlier than November. Isn't that correct?
His June 11th memorandum speaks to not issuing Volume 1 prior to schedule. It does also speak about other volumes, but only Volume 1 is specifically identified as not being released prior to August.
Okay, but prior to November was Volume 3.
Volume 3 was due in November,
Okay.
correct.
Now, was the impact of his actions and the SCR Volume 3 would not be completed by what date? Did you say October 1? Or what?
November.
November, okay. Now, as you report on page 27, when senior staff discussed the chairman's actions to slow the completion of the SCR, they indicated to the chairman that it would be contrary to the agency's value of openness and transparency to slow down that work. Is that correct?
Our report reflects that one manager told us that, correct.
So at least one commissioner also warned the chairman that it was not a good idea to slow the process. Is that correct?
Yes.
One commissioner, yes, also agreed that it shouldn't be slowed.
Did the chairman listen to the senior staff or other commissioners and allow the staff review to continue at the same pace the staff themselves had set?
No.
The staff also informed the Commission in March 30, 2010, that it planned to continue to work on any remaining SER volumes until FY 2010 funds were exhausted. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Were those funds exhausted by November of 2010?
No, they were not. By the end of the fiscal year 2010, there was approximately $7 million remaining.
Okay, and in fact, according to your report, the NRC staff, including the EDO, assumed as late as mid-September that the CR guidance would allow for continuing the license review with those available funds, as you said. So the draft EDO CFO memos of mid-September bear this out. So despite the chairman's instructions to slow down, staff planned to continue work using those FY10 funds. But the chairman changed that. That's where we are, right?
The senior staff always anticipated that they would be able to complete certain volumes, and they were relying on FY10 funds to do that.
So this was the chairman's strategy, to slow walk the critical report to October, early November, and then use his budget authority to ensure the staff's findings would not be made public. Is that correct?
I think the report is reflective of the fact that once it got into budget space, you'd have to use another mechanism by which to change the course. And since you did have the budget guidance memorandum that everyone was complying with, it would have taken a calm at that juncture then to move it over in the policy space.
Right. My time's almost up. Let me ask this question. Did your investigation examine whether the chairman's actions were directed by or coordinated with the White House or Senator Harry Reid?
We had no indications or inferences by anyone that came to us that assured us or stated to us that that occurred.
My question was, did you examine that possibility? Did you look into that with any of the witnesses?
There was nothing that would lead us to that from the information of the interviews that we conducted where anyone stated that at all. So we didn't go and probe any further in that regard. We stayed within regards to the allegation that was proffered to us, and no one said that there was any interference by the White House at all.
All right, but did you ask?
I'd have to get back. I want to get back with you on that one particular point just to ensure in our notes. But I just want to assure you that that never came up.
Okay, but my question is, did you ask if there were any communications along the lines of what I just
I'll have to get back with you with regards to that specific question.
Thank you. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman's time expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Cassidy, for 5 minutes.
Thank you all. Now, I appreciate Mr. Markey's efforts to defend his former employee, but he alleged that maybe those other commissioners were derelict in their responsibility of learning as much as they could learn. Did you find any evidence of dereliction of duty in learning other issues by the other commissioners?
I think, again, I think it was clear that when the commissioners were interviewed by our office, they were very concerned by the fact that they felt they did not have all the information.
Okay. Now, earlier, I think you, Mr. Bell, mentioned that the senior staff felt constrained in conveying information to the other commissioners. But just to be clear, would they have been constrained without instructions from the chairman as to what to communicate? Would they on their own have said, oh, we shall be constrained because whatever? Or would it would have been a directive from their chairman to not communicate certain issues?
Well, I think it was pretty common knowledge that any communications that went back to the chairman had to go through the chairman's office.
So the constraint would have come from the chairman?
It was just the way this chairman has elected to do business, that if it's not a policy issue, and his office control whatever it was, whatever request commissioners made, whether it be the budget or otherwise, before the commissioners got an answer, it had to be flowed, it had to be vetted through the chairman's office.
So ultimately, just in a word, it was the chairman's responsibility, it was the chairman who was doing the constraining.
Correct.
Correct. Now, you know, I've been here for 3 years, and I look at taxpayers who just see $15 billion frittered away, and I have to ask, although you're clear that he may have been within the letter of the law, or there's a question of fact and we can't resolve this question of fact, do you think he was within the spirit of the law in terms of the Reorganization Act, and was he within the spirit of the law communicating to his fellow commissioners that which they needed to know?
I think, again, I think the chairman was given just enough information for them to understand what he wanted to do.
Now, again, is that within the spirit of the law as originally, I mean, I can imagine somebody writing the law way back when. How do we account for a control freak who decides to only define as policy issues those things which are relatively unimportant, to define others as budget issues, and then to be selective in presentation? That would be very hard to write a statute to exclude what someone attempts to do. Was he within the spirit of the law in terms of communication with his fellow commissioners?
That, in fact, could, in fact, be called into questions of whether or not he was in the spirit of the law. as designed for an open collaborative engagement with the other commissioners.
Now, as regards this question of fact, because earlier, ma'am, you had mentioned that there's a question of fact. The EDO suggests that he was told by the chairman not to do something, but the chairman does not recall. A little bit of a dodge, but let's give it to him. Now, I've been deposed before, and I watch law programs on TV. There is a milieu in which people trying to establish which side of the question of fact is most likely true. Is there a pattern on one side of duplicity, of hiding, of ignoring the spirit of a law, of, again, doing whatever you can to avoid certain outcomes? Does this person have a motivation to not recall? Or is there, on the other side, such motivation? Now, it does seem as if, as I look at this question of fact, I'm much more likely to believe the EDO, and I'm much more likely to think that if this were to go to some sort of judicial proceeding, that the judge would be more likely to believe the EDO. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't have any thoughts.
Okay. No. Lastly, I see that in his confirmation hearings before the Senate in 2005, Mr. Yasko said that he was going to recuse himself from all issues regarding Yucca Mountain for a year. And at that point, he was hopeful to have demonstrated that he could absolutely be fair and objective, and that there would no longer be a need to recuse himself. In your opinion, does the actions of the chairman indicate that he has been fair and objective regarding the Yucca Mountain issue?
Well, I think the time frame that you're referring to was when he was a commissioner.
Yes.
And during that time frame, anything with Yucca Mountain, he did recuse himself from.
But that's not my question. My question is, he said he did not need to recuse himself from consideration of Yucca Mountain issues throughout his entire tenure on NRC because he would prove himself to be fair and objective. I think that's, yeah, fair and objective, kind of like Fox News. Is he proven himself to be fair and objective, in your opinion, regarding Yucca Mountain?
Well, not in terms of the information sharing aspect of it anyway.
Okay.
Also, sir, I wanted to clarify the questions you asked previously about direction from the White House. We did, in fact, ask that question, and no one indicated that there was any direction from the President or the White House to close the program. That question was, in fact, asked.
Thank you all. I yield back.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, one, I didn't know it was so easy to get a law license. I watch it on TV. But I would agree that this chairman might be as fair as objective as Fox News is.
We thank the ranking member for those interrogatory there. We do want to thank you for coming. We do appreciate the effort that you did and the position that you hold within the NRC, and it's a tough position because you're checking upon yourself. And so we know you've worked diligently, and we do appreciate it. And I want to thank you for coming and for the members who have participated and their devotion to the hearing today. The committee rules provide that members have 10 days to submit additional questions for the record to the witnesses, and if you then receive those, if you would reply to us, we would appreciate that. Again, thanking you for your attendance. The hearing stands adjourned.